Hello, welcome to the second episode of the Belonging Experiment, a podcast where we explore the messy, beautiful journey of finding home while living abroad.
Hi, I'm Roby.
And I'm Anu. We are two very ordinary women navigating life's big changes, and we have big questions from moving countries to redefining where we belong.
Yeah, so before we begin, let me ask you, Anu, can you share something that you did that's very interesting the past week?
I knew you'll ask me this question today, and I was like, I didn't do anything interesting. And then I gave it a lot of thought, and I realized I now have a coffee routine in the mornings. So I
Hmm.
realized now what I do is I mean, as you know, we're staying in like this temporary Airbnb, which
Right.
means that we have a really nice garden outside. I will take zero credit for it because I do nothing. Um, so what I do is I make my really warm cup of coffee and then I take it out. It's still about 10 degrees. It's pretty warm it's pretty
Okay.
warm in comparison to the spring that we're usually used to in Tokyo. So this feels warm. So it's about 10 degrees in the morning and then I sit down. Normally, if I were to sit down in the balcony, I would listen to music, but because we're living almost in the countryside over here, it is so beautiful because you can hear the birds chirping in the
I can
mornings,
imagine
and they're
it.
so loud and so rowdy. But it's really nice to just sit there with a hot cup of coffee, steaming, and it cools down pretty quickly as well. So it's nice to have a nice
How,
calm drink in the
yeah.
morning.
How do you make your coffee?
Oh my God, I was hoping you don't ask this.
Because I realized like
Okay,
there's two kinds of people like do the
okay.
pour over coffee and all the technicalities, and then there's another one like, well, I'm just using a pot, but I still love coffee. Don't judge me. So where are you?
I transitioned from person number one to person number two.
We
Nobody does.
listen and we don't judge.
Yes, people here, generally nobody, I don't think anybody really drinks coffee at home.
Right.
They go to the barista because the coffee here is about €1 45 cents, which is really cheap. So people generally go to the closest patisserie, or no, it's not called a patisserie. It's called a padaria in Portuguese. So they go there for
Oh,
their morning coffee.
yeah.
And if you have it at home, every home that I've seen have pods. So when I when I was
Just
new,
asking, just asking.
I came with my whole setup, okay, I promise. But then these pod coffees are pretty great, and I like them. I'll say hello to my kitty cat. She's a little bit
How do you call the bake shop in Portuguese? Because that's very similar in the Philippines. We call it panaderia. And
oh, it's called padaria over here.
mm,
Pastelaria or
yeah,
padaria, but I think padaria is the um Portuguese word for it.
yeah. Mm. Okay, now I know. You're not judged. I'm just asking. Well, so there was something interesting that happened to my week as well. So it was the pre-birthday of Kelly. I mean, the weekend before his birthday. So we decided to invite some friends, some of his friends to come over. I prepared dinner, and there's two other couples basically who joined us. So it's nice to just get to know, and starting to build community. But and then it was nice. They were very nice. They were asking me how my transition was like. And then when they left, I felt something weird. And there's a lot of emotions. And this is what I need to unpack a little bit. So I started feeling a bit weird and sad. And then the next day, the emotions were just all over the place. And then I started really trying to reflect what happened. And I think I know what happened. I think I missed my friends because it was his friends and they were so nice, but I missed like hosting and also the topics. It's just different. There's a lot of cultural differences, right? Like I feel like the main topic with like Asian group would be, oh, so how's your life been? Like it's really very personal. Whereas the discussions that we've had were more intellectual, which is nice. But I just missed my tribe. I think that was the
Hmm.
reason. And then it just kind of like the emotions were all over the place, which I feel
Oh,
like
poor
is
thing.
connected to what we will be talking today. And, I also told you that I'm so thankful we're doing this podcast because I feel like I'm finally moving on by discussing all these topics. So, yeah, so that was the
And
interesting part of, yeah, last week.
and on that note, let us kick off this episode. This episode is titled Leaving Japan, the Messy Business of Moving On.
Yes. And both of us left Japan almost at the same time, 6 months apart, and let's just say it was a ride. So today we will discuss that. We will unpack the highs, the lows, and all the logistical nightmares of living Japan. And Japan is, a country that we called home.
Ruby, sorry about my cat coming here. She's
The cat
extra
is part
needy
of the
and
family.
clingy. She's she's part of the podcast and she doesn't know.
True. Our guest.
Anyway, we were regularly having conversations, you and I, about life in Japan and everything. And we did, and I remember when you and I met for coffee one day, you had told me at that time, you were like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be moving to America. Of course, you went through the entire story with me. But my question to you is, when did you figure out that it was time for you to leave? And how did you feel about it at that time?
Yeah. So I think living in Japan, I called it home, but from a mindset perspective, I think I was always open to move to another country. It's just that every time I think about it, I was like, man, I don't want to start all over again. But I always knew that was a possibility. So I think I knew that it was time to leave when my husband now, my fiance then, when we were discussing where to settle. Right. And we were talking about, of course, it's always nice if we could just continue our lives in Japan. But we were also, he didn't have the community that I had. So he didn't have a lot of support system. And so it was a consideration to go back to the US. And for me, moving to the US kind of like excites me more as well because, well, for one, it's an English speaking country. And then I also have my brother here who is now living in the US too. So I felt
Oh.
like I could adjust more. So I think that was the time when I thought to myself, like, yeah, I think it's time to leave. I was excited about it, but also I was anticipating that it's going to be hard to say goodbye about Japan. So yeah, so that was kind of like a short story of the long journey that I had. How about you? Like, when did you know that it was time to leave Japan?
I mean, when we moved to Japan, it was supposed to be a very short engagement. It was supposed to be like a 2 year stint that my husband had to do at that time. And one of the first things I asked him is, I'm like, are you sure I have to come? Like, why can't you just go? Like, if it's going to be two
Yeah,
years, why do you want to have this whole,
yeah,
process? Why should we go through this process? Then two became three, became five, and then COVID happened.
yeah,
I
sure.
think I think deep down we always wanted to be in Europe. For us, the idea of living in Europe and traveling to European countries always sounded appealing to us, and that is something that really motivated us. So we were, I guess, always looking for opportunities to move. Unfortunately for the situation and my husband, I think in my sixth and seventh year, I started finding some really solid friendships, whether it was with the old team that we had,
Exactly.
started getting a little bit more settled and started seeing myself. being able to live in Japan and navigate our daily lives much more than I could in the first 2 years. That's when I started taking Japanese seriously, studying Japanese seriously. And then I used to study like 10 new words every day, do like two, three kanjis a day. I would study on a regular basis, 2, 3 hours. When Naveen had this opportunity to move, he's like, "Hey, great, it's an amazing opportunity. I've been telling you about Portugal for the longest time. Let's go." And by then, I had just moved to the new organization and I really liked my team. I loved the work that we were doing. It was such an impactful job. So I looked at him and said, "Congratulations. I won't be joining you this time. You may go." And he was shocked. He was like, he's like, "I checked with you. I asked you. What do you mean? Like, you may go. What about you?" I was like, "No, I refuse to do this time around." Thinking back, I still don't know. I can't tell you if I made the right decision or no at that time. But he left, and I said, "I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to continue living in Japan and experience how my job is going to be for some more time. Maybe I'll join you a year later," which for me, I think I really enjoyed the time because I was single. I was living a bachelor life there. So for me, it came at an unfortunate time, the move, where I was having the
Right.
best time. I Then I saw you
Yeah.
leave, and I'm like, yeah, I should probably work towards
Yeah.
a stronger relationship with my
Yeah.
husband at this point and accompany him or something.
Can I just say though that
But
I'm really happy, and that story makes me smile because it's, yeah, like we can make decisions despite, like you both were already married, but you needed that time for yourself, I think.
Mm.
And saying and prioritizing yourself too was also kind of like a good move, because I don't think, now now that you moved a year later, I think that you're more emotionally ready to move as well. And now that you're in your new country, I feel like you're embracing the new experiences because you had the time to prepare. So I think that was really nice. And different different situations, but I think we have almost the same timeline of like waiting for a year. So I think that was really good to be able to say goodbye to friends without being rushed, and I think that helped me a lot with my transition to the new country as well. Yeah. So now let's talk about this. This is the exciting part, or maybe not, unpacking all the nightmare of moving, the logistics, and the goodbyes. And so let's start with the logistics first, all the admin things that you had to do before leaving Japan.
so I'm actually going to push that question to you because you started the move first. And I
Right.
remember we met multiple times to talk through to talk about the whole move and to talk about the process and everything. And you had a lot of tips and tricks for me. But before I tell you how helpful that was for me, I'd like to know the for me, you make everything look effortless. Okay,
Oh,
so
thank
when
you.
I asked you about a certain things, you were like, "Oh, so I just did this. I scaled down like this, and then this happened, and that happened, and then everything, and now I just have two suitcases, and I'm ready to go." I'm like, "Who is this woman? Like, what does she mean, two suitcases? How is she could not go? What is the matter with her? How can she do this?" So I was in absolute awe. But now that I've been through the process, it must have been hell. So please tell me.
Right.
How did
Yes,
you
yes.
go through this?
So, what I mentioned is that we technically had a year to prepare. So I think that's number one. If you have a chance to, if you're going through a transition, and if you could just prepare as much as you could ahead of time, and, do all the pre-tasks ahead of time. Oh my God, I'm sounding like I'm working. But that was really helpful. Yeah, that was really helpful so I tried to scale down all the things that I have, because living in Japan for 10 years, I kind of like just accumulated little things, and I was although I'm not as successful as Marie Kondo in doing a minimalist life, I feel like every month I had to let go of something, right? And I preferred selling them just because I just want to hand it over to the new owner. So we have this Facebook marketplace or the expat group in Facebook in Japan where you can sell your stuff. And I've figured out like what is the right price. So you really have to drop it like 30% of the value so that people would would really go for it. Otherwise it doesn't make sense for people to buy in the marketplace, right? So even that I kind of like figured out what's the right pricing. Um but overall I think what was really difficult for me aside from the logistics was also deciding whether I should keep my permanent residency. So I applied for a permanent residency visa in Japan, and I don't know if I'm still not, officially, I have not officially moved on, but I just feel like I wasn't ready to give it up. So I kept it, but eventually I realized it actually made sense because the bigger issue is I now have to consider what is my insurance going to look like? How is my retirement plan going to look like? Because we contributed for the last 10 years in Japan. So all of those are kind of like very tricky to find because there's no material online that will tell you how a permanent resident visa holder could move out of Japan, and these are the things that you need to do. There's just no materials for it or guide that you could do. So I think that was more the harder part for me. Yeah, and packing, I was, I think because I know that I'm not going to ship furnitures, for instance, it was easy for me to kind of like just, okay, I'm gonna already send some of the clothes that I don't need, like the winter clothes, because I'm moving out in
Mm,
summer. So I kind of like sent it in advance, and they actually came to the US
mm.
earlier than I did. So I think those were the tips that I had for you. And how was it like for you? So was it helpful that I gave you some tips, and yeah, what did you discover more with the logistics?
So I was just writing it down so that I don't miss out what I was going to say. So basically, for me, I had a few first-hand experiences because I'd seen some people who were really close to me move. I think two things that you told me was super helpful. One is to ship everything ahead of time. The second one was to change my number to get the Yahoo, the Y Mobile, no, the Rakuten Mobile, you said.
Rakuten Mobile, Rakuten.
To get the
Oh, yes,
Rakuten
yes,
phone
yes.
number. Those were like very helpful because even now I get phone calls from Japan to figure out a lot of things. It's so much easier to have a Rakuten, and it's
Exactly.
cheaper for me to call from Japan internationally to Japan local. So that way I was able to figure a few things out with the phone. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Hey.
Um, so when I went at the two phases of move, I think the second one was when Naveen moved. When he came here to Portugal, he left a lot of things behind with me, and he left a lot of things to ship through like an external service. Now, apparently, the whole process was very hard for them to do, so they said, "Sorry, we can't take responsibility for this," and brought it back. Now, I was living in a 30 square meter house, and then I had my things I had to scale down, and I had his things to scale down, and to a point where they had stacked it up. They had stacked up these huge, those IKEA boxes, like humongous IKEA boxes that they have. So they had stacked it up at the door, and I'm like, I can't even get in and get out of the house. I barely have enough space for myself and my two cats. But somehow, and each was like 20 kilos, okay. And then I had to like figure the whole thing out. I had to go to the embassy many times to get the ship. Moving things to Europe is very, very painful. If anybody's watching
Oh,
this, just don't do it. Just get rid
just
of
drop it.
everything. You won't believe we sent like about 6 boxes. It's still not arrived. And we are just doing the paperwork with the customs right now. and it's just so painful. And I'm like,
Wow.
these are used books. These are used books, and these are used bike parts. Like, what do you want? And it takes up a lot of
Wow.
our time. So we're wondering now, in hindsight, we're wondering if that's really worth it. But then if we're hoping that in the long run we get a lot of happiness through these
Oh, it will
material
be. It will be.
possessions.
Yeah, it will be. When those
Yeah.
boxes finally arrive and you start unboxing them and it's like, oh yes, oh yes, it will be. It will be. Yes, I
I
guarantee. And yeah.
I did pack some happy stationery items into it in case I get very upset about certain things, so that when I open the box, I have some
Yeah.
happy,
Oh,
positive things
that's
to look
nice.
forward to.
Yeah.
Very clairvoyant of you. You saw that coming.
No, but I just wanted to add because I had a totally different experience. So if you're moving from Japan to the US, I just used the Japan Post, very
Mm,
reliable. The
same.
boxes arrived 2 months after. So I didn't even have to wait customs where I didn't have issue with with customs. So that was really nice. There's one thing that I wanted to share, and I learned this from a friend. Because when you're moving to another country or moving to different place, sometimes our initial idea is to just get rid of a lot of things, right? For instance, even your bed sheet or your pillowcase, like you would just, okay, let's leave it. Let's buy a new one. But a friend of mine gave me a different perspective. When you're moving to a new country, everything will be new. You want things that are familiar to you. And that's why I kept some of the things that I really love. Like I know this is so it's not just the monetary value, it's also the feeling of setting up your new home by bringing things that are familiar. And I love that. Like and so those boxes when they finally arrive, it will be worth it because those are the books that you love and all of those things. So I'm looking
You
forward to
know
that
why
when you open those boxes.
you know why I'm smiling? Because when I didn't think of that for myself, but for the cats, I retained everything that they like, to a point where the day we moved, one of the suitcases, the hand carry suitcases that we have, the smaller cabin one, only had their blankets. They have like this red throw that was gifted to me that they fell in love with. So that was theirs. So I had three throws that I carried in my handbag for them. And I had like two, like these velvety pieces of cloth to carry for them.
Right.
And like my husband's like, why? We can just get new things. And I'm like, no, they need that
No,
familiar
no,
smell. They need
exactly.
I couldn't think about it for me
See?
because I'm like,
We're
yeah, whatever, like I'm used to it,
same.
right? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did
Yes, I
not.
like that. So we're going a little bit into the emotional side of goodbyes now because we're shifting a little bit, and that's I think my next question to you is how did you say goodbye to your friends? Did you do like big gatherings, gather all your circle of friends from different places, or did you do more of like small personal moments, gatherings, let's say?
I think 10 years ago, I would have done like a big gathering, but then I'm just too old for that. No,
Yes.
I have grown to enjoy the value of these closer bonds and appreciate that I have a different bond with every person. I think my farewell lasted almost 6 months, like June, July, because I had a friend of mine from India come and visit, and we stayed in Kyoto for like 5 days. And I kept telling myself, I'm like, do this because you never know when you're going to come back. So then I'm like, why am I already saying bye? Like, I still have time. I can come back anytime, but I couldn't help myself from doing that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kept consuming things, thinking it was the last time. Every time I met up with some of our common friends, departure related conversation would also come up. So it felt like it was a very long departure. And towards the end, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I didn't want. I had met with everybody that I reached out to. And there was somebody that I reached out to who said, "Oh, I can't make it." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I'll see
Yeah.
you when I see you, I guess."
Yeah.
So, I did individual ones to answer your question, and we had like a nice big office farewell, which was very touching.
Right,
It's like,
right,
I
right.
don't want to cry. I don't want to cry. I'm not going to cry because I'm going to see these people soon, very soon.
Yeah.
I think that was it for me. How about for you? How did you say your farewells?
Think I did the same. So because I had technically I knew that I was moving um 1 year before my actual flight. So I made sure that I have time to say goodbye to everyone, either going for just kind of like an out of town or even just go hiking, depending on the type of friends that I have. So I want to make sure that I have quality time with them. And yeah, I think you're completely right. If this was like 10 years ago or like 15 years ago, it would have been a different way of saying goodbye to friends. But now it's really more intentional. Like you can also say goodbye to some of your friends intentionally and just doing the things that you would normally do because these are the things that you will miss. On a personal side, though, I think I had this goal of traveling the 47 prefectures of Japan. So I know that in my last year, I still have like 5 or 6 remaining prefectures, but they were all in the south area. So that was also kind of like, from an emotional perspective, my own way of saying goodbye to the Philippines, to Japan. See, I'm mixing up my homes now. But there was one thing that I intentionally did. The last prefecture that I visited was Nagasaki because just because of the history with I know I'm going a little bit like historical. I wanted to visit um the museums there and just connecting it, like this is, and it's also the prefecture in itself is a very that's where they would exile Catholics in the past, and there's just a lot of things happening in that prefecture that I wanted to learn more about the history. So yeah, so that was my personal, yeah, emotional side of saying goodbye.
Just to make it a little lighter after Nagasaki, what is just from a materialistic perspective, what are some things that you miss about Japan? Not the people and not your way of life.
I miss all my facial creams, my face lotion. So those are the things that I miss. I do miss as well the thrifting, shopping scene in Japan because in Japan, luxury is part of life, right? Like they're not very flashy, but they all can afford to buy luxury items. So the thrift stores in Japan are very, very nice. So I think I miss that as well. And the food, I think. Yeah, just food is just amazing in Japan. How about you? What do you
Wow.
miss?
Mapo tofu. I onigiri. I'm not able to find it now, but I did bring an onigiri maker. So I have sushi rice, I have the seaweed and everything, but I can't find the onigiri maker. So I should rummage through my suitcase again to try and find it. When I was in Paris recently, I went to Uniqlo and they were like, why is it so
I love it.
expensive?
Yeah, sure.
So I didn't buy anything because I'm like, in Japan,
I
I'm
know how
gonna
much
pay
this
this
costs.
much. This is ridiculous. I was like, no, I'm not gonna buy it. I miss access to um I miss access to the Korean town and Korean food. I think Korean food in Japan is just absolutely amazing. That's something that I really miss. Um, Muji. Do you miss
Yes,
Muji? I miss
I
Muji
miss
so much.
Muji, and I love their notebooks, their pens, all the random stuff in Muji. Yeah, so I miss them
I
too.
have their 2025 planner, but I'm wondering how I should make plans to secure the 2026 one. And I'm already thinking, who should I ask?
Yeah,
Who is in Japan? Who can I say, can you please make a parcel and send it to Europe? with like just Muji stuff.
Yes, yes. I'm thinking
Um,
of that too. But like let me just ask you this last question about like moving and logistics. How was your final goodbye like the last day in Japan? Like, was it something that because I feel like we sometimes anticipate, oh, I'm going to be very, very sad, and this is how I imagine my last day is going to be like. So, what actually happened on your last day?
Honestly, my last day was a haze. What I the bits and pieces that I remember is we had like an office farewell the previous day. I needed to, we needed to finish all the final packing the previous day as well, just kind of reorganizing everything. We stayed in a friend's house for I think the last 4 days, so just to make sure that everything that I cleaned up her house so that I was not an inconvenience to her. Unfortunately for us, I think from a timeline perspective, it was a little hurried towards the end because of a lot of factors. So I had the house key handover on the last day. That was really tiring. Although we had gotten like a lot of things done, some people committed to come and pick up a few things from us through the Facebook market groups, and they didn't show up, or they came and they're like, now I can't pick this
Right.
up.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, I'm giving it to you for free. I don't know what else you want me to do at this point. Uh,
Yeah,
so um,
that's yeah, I don't
that
like
was
those. Yeah.
painful. It was highs and lows. I was very sure that I'm not going to sleep that night, but I pushed myself to go to sleep. And that I think that's what kept me going for the next 28 hours of travel with the cats.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a good day. I was when I was on the flight, I was looking down and I could see, Skytree and Tokyo Tower. I was about to get emotional and start crying, and then my cats are freaking
Oh,
out, and then I'm like, okay, you're more important right now. My emotions are not
oh,
important.
that's
You're
so nice though. You have a
important.
distraction.
I did. So ensuring that they were comfortable was my focus at that time. So I didn't really feel as emotional as I should in that moment. I'm sure it was different for you. How was your last day?
Yeah, so I think you're right. Like it's a bit hazy just because you're doing last minute packing. You're also making sure that I bring everything and like you always overpack. Like you thought you only have two suitcases and then, oh, how can I fit everything in here? So I think I was still doing last minute repacking and all of that. And in the end I had to ship one more box because they won't all fit in. So I think that was my last 24 hours, just finalizing what to pack. And similar to you, I stayed over in a friend's house for the last, I think, 1 month. So he helped me a lot, and I think it's really good to stay with a friend because uh, the emotions are you could express what you feel and they're there to emotionally support you. So yeah, we got I spent the last 24 hours with them. We went for an ice cream. And we stayed at his place and just eating and talking. So that's the most important one. And then the next day, then there was someone to actually bring me to the airport and finally say goodbye. So I was still okay. I gave them a hug. And when I was already in, all the emotions came in like, oh, I miss them already, all the friendships that I built here. Yeah, it all came in rushing. And I cried. Yeah. In the airplane, I was like one of those, in the movies when someone broke up with their lover. And like, but for me, it was like breaking up with Japan. Yeah. So that was yeah,
But
24 hours in Japan.
there's always this promise of us being able to go back. And I think that's what
I
always
think
was
so, yeah.
lingering in
Yeah.
my head to say, I have a feeling I'm going to come back here. I have a feeling I'm going to go back to, Uniqlo. I have a feeling I'm going to go back to Muji. So maybe I should feel my heart and
Exactly.
and
Yeah. I like that. And I think when we feel like, because that's, I think, one of the contributors and why we're feeling sad sometimes is we feel like we will never be able to have the same experience again. Well, yes and no. Yes, that maybe it's not exactly the same, but I mean, you could always go back. Like, Japan is always going to be there, and you could always visit, maybe on a different perspective the next time you go back to Japan, maybe wiser. But I think just,
Or not.
trying not, or not. Trying not to hold on the previous experience, but just welcoming new experiences, I think, is going to be my tip there.
I think one maybe one last question from me, Robbie.
Yeah.
Looking back, what is something you'd have done differently?
So I was thinking about this question and I felt like, you know what, I had enough time to say goodbye to my friends. I was able to do all those logistical nightmares. I think what I would have done differently is to pack more of the Japanese goodies in the box. So that's what I did not do because when I was still in Japan, I don't know what I will miss, like I don't want to bring ramen right now. I don't want to bring all these chocolates. Like there will be chocolates in the US. But man, now I'm looking back, it's like I should have just packed those because it's like your care package. Yeah, so that's one thing I would have done differently. How about you? But
I had a lot of, I mean, I kept criticizing myself quite a bit after I came here. I'm like, I should have done this better. I should have done this sooner.
yeah,
I should have.
uh,
Recently, another friend of mine moved. I gave her a complete lowdown of everything that I did, what she has to do. I broke it up in timelines and I shared it with her. I'm like, you do this now, do this later, do this next week, and all of that. And when I talked to her after, or when she was leaving, the night before she left, she kept beating herself up, and she was like, "I didn't do this. I should have done this sooner." Exactly like what I was thinking is what she was saying about herself. And then I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, you do not realize the magnitude of how much you've accomplished in this short time that you've had. Stop beating yourself up. You've done really well. And then I'm like, wait, why am I not telling this to myself? Why am I why am I telling this to
yeah,
her but not to myself? So that's when I said, at the end of the day, like there are a lot of things that I wish I could had done better, but it was not easy scaling down. It
right.
was not easy leaving the people. And if I just think about the amount of complications I had with visa before I left and with the cats, it was just, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, maybe, maybe couldn't have done anything better at this point. So yeah, I guess for now I would say nothing. I will tell you
Yes.
I will talk to you when I'm filing my income tax papers and when I'm filing my pension
Oh,
papers. Let's
yes,
start.
yes. That's going to be the next one for you.
Anyway,
Yeah.
on that note, I
Um,
think it's time to wrap up the episode. Um, so, with that, we come to the end of our second episode. I have a question for the viewers. If you are someone who has recently moved countries or even different cities within the same country that you live, we'd love to hear your stories and what your experience was like. What do you think you would have done differently from what we did? Reach out to us on our podcast email, which is belongingexperiment@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe. We have plenty more
yes,
conversations coming your
please.
way.
Yes, and I'm also really looking forward to our next topic. In our next episode, we will discuss the honeymoon and the hangover of settling into a new country. So that's going to be very exciting. The emotional stages of moving on, the excitement, the reality check, and like finding our new community as well. So those are the things that we're looking forward to discuss in our next episode. Thank you very much for listening in and see you next time.
Bye.